just took the chairs away.
We can maybe we should switch places. Okay.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Yes. Welcome once again to the home of sustainable agriculture of the Americas. No? No? Hello, hello, hello. Yes? Yes? As a Director General for ICA, I'm very glad to have you here to discuss a critical issue for the future of agriculture and the future of the planet. I'm very glad because we are having a very interesting agenda with topics, once again, that are crucial for the future of the planet. And in this case, to analyze the vital role of biofuels in decarbonizing the transport sector. So we are going to analyze and to explore how biofuel innovations can address two of the most pressing challenges of our times: reducing greenhouse gas emission and advancing energy security. Let me tell you that transportation is a major source of global carbon emissions, contributing significantly to climate change and air pollution. In Latin America and the Caribbean, where agriculture and natural resources are central to the economy, biofuels offer an opportunity to transform our approach to energy and reduce dependency on fossil fuels. By harnessing renewable resources like sugarcane, corn, and other biomass, biofuels provide a low-carbon alternative that complement electric vehicles and can make a substantial impact in sectors where electrifications alone may not be feasible. Today's dialogue is an opportunity to examine how biofuels can help advance our decarbonization goals, particularly once again in transport, and how we can address the challenges and scaling up the solutions sustainably. I will pass the mic to the moderator, the one and only Lloyd A. He's a unique guy, my friend, by the way, my friend. So, Lloyd, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Director General. I'm really thrilled to be with this distinguished panel today to discuss the role of liquid biofuels. During the Director General's administration, he has promoted the bioeconomy. And I think one of the best ways to talk about the bioeconomy is how do we move from a fossil fuels-based economy to a bioeconomy in which we use plants and biomass in order to do a whole range of activities. One of the most successful elements of the bioeconomy has been the liquid biofuels. I've got to take this off because it's too loud. I tried to turn it down and I couldn't. Maybe my voice is just too loud. But one of the most successful elements of the bioeconomy has been liquid biofuels. And we have a number of great examples around the world where this is happening. I'm from the United States. I've seen the expansion of economic development created by the ethanol industry. Brazil really started a lot of that. back in the 1970s. This has now grown around the world. We've worked with you and the U.S. Grains Council to bring the Central American energy ministers together with us just a few weeks ago to discuss how we can reduce their dependence on fossil fuels and also take advantage of biofuels. That's so uncomfortable. The real exciting thing about biofuels from a perspective that I'll quote one of your customers, the vice president of POET, the largest ethanol company in the world, is that biofuels, investment in biofuels is an investment in agriculture. And so from the perspective of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, representing the farmers and ranchers and ministers of agriculture from across the Americas, investment in this is an investment in the survival and the economic viability of agriculture, which is a very difficult industry, which is an industry that depends on the climate. So biofuels, liquid biofuels, provides the opportunity not just to invest in agriculture and in farmers, but at the same time reduces emissions. And so we want to talk about this today, and we're with a group of distinguished panelists, and I will go in the order that they're seated, and hopefully I don't get any of the names right. Linda Schmidt is Manager of Ethanol Policy and Sustainability at the U.S. Grains Council. Gloria Alvarenga is the director. I got it right. is the Director of Integration, Access, and Energy Security for the Latin American Energy Organization, OLADE. Linda Schmidt, no, sorry, already had you, I gotta go. Lais Forti Tomas is the advisor to the Brazilian National Secretariat of Petroleum, Natural Gas, and Biofuels at the Ministry of Mines and Energy.
Can I make a correction?
You have to use a microphone.
I'll say my name. We had a change of plans and Lais didn't make it, but I'm Lais as well. But I'm Lais Garcia and I work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
All right, but that didn't get to my,
Okay.
well, you know, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from Brazil, huge biofuels country, and then Andrew Matter, the Director of Policy and Economics for the International Air Transport Association. So we're delighted to have you all. I'm going to ask you all to give a presentation for just about 10 minutes, and then from that presentation, we'll ask some questions, and you've seen some of the questions, and I'm sure if the audience has anything to ask, we'll move on to that. So with that, Linda, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you very much, Lloyd. I'm delighted to be here at COP29, which I think is really an important benchmark for us in reaching net zero. And I want to talk a little bit about blending trends across the world. The U.S. Grains Council has offices really around the world, and we have a bird's eye view of how governments are using bioethanol because they view it as a valuable asset in terms of its clean air quality benefits, the fact that it helps to reduce emissions, and also because it helps them lower their fuel bill, because it is a substitute for fossil fuels. And you'll see that bottom line, most high-income countries blend bioethanol into their petroleum at about a 10% rate. And then we have some exceptional countries that blend at a 27% rate and a 20% rate that use bioethanol across their economy in terms of electricity, with flex fuel vehicles. So we certainly have some of the leaders on the stage here in the use of bioethanol and in terms of its, and recognize not only the clean air qualities, but also the social and economic benefits of bioethanol, because it returns income to farmers. It diversifies the economy. It expands opportunities for farm families and rural communities. In terms of production, the U.S. is the leader in terms of production. We rank number one. We produce about 45% of bioethanol, and we should note that in terms of the global trading system, about 10% of all bioethanol that is produced is traded across borders. So that's one reason why the cross-border flow of bioethanol is so important. because it can help countries reduce their carbon emissions. And when we see tariffs, when we see value-added tax, when we see obstacles to trade in bioethanol, we are in fact putting a tax on decarbonization and increasing the costs of reducing our emissions. So that's one message we want to get across, that cross-border flows of bioethanol are important to reducing emissions. I mean, the other point that I'd like to make here with this slide is that many countries produce bioethanol from a variety of feedstocks, whether it's corn, whether it is sugarcane, cassava, and even in the United States, countries move up the value chain of bioethanol production. It may be that in some countries who are interested in producing bioethanol, they'll first produce it because they want to do clean cooking with ethanol, because of the air quality benefits of it. So it is really a unique asset that many countries are using and producing to enrich their farmers and diversify their economies. Now, one of the major reasons in the United States why there are emission reductions in bioethanol is because we are increasing our yield per acre. And here you will see the trajectory of increasing corn yields per acre. It's expected to continue to increase at 1% per year. So research and development technology is instrumental in increasing yield, and that is one of the primary factors in reducing emissions. The more corn we can produce on an acre, the lower the emissions for that product. Not only is corn production increasing in terms of yield, the other thing that's happening in the industry is that we are increasing the production of ethanol per bushel of corn. That is another major change in the bioethanol industry. We're becoming more efficient in producing bioethanol. That represents a dramatic change in emissions. The more ethanol we can produce from an acre of corn, the less emissions that we have. Another primary factor in reducing emissions in ethanol is by changing our fuel sources throughout the value chain of ethanol production. That's another factor that brings down those costs. And then the other thing I want to mention that some folks don't really know about is all of the value-added products that come from bioethanol. So products, because of the different properties of bioethanol, you get it. Bioethanol is used in the cosmetic industries. It's used in the medical industry. It produces feed for livestock. Almost a third of production goes to feed for livestock. And so it is really a valuable commodity because of its unique properties. And so this is another example of how it diversifies the economy. When you're thinking about bioproducts, when you're thinking about products that replace fossil fuel products in terms of packaging, in terms of biodegradable products, that oftentimes comes from the bioethanol production process. So I just want to make that point. And quickly, I would say that what we're seeing is bioethanol becoming, it's already a mainstay for on-road use. Now, it is just beginning to be a major component of sustainable aviation fuel. Commercially, you'll see most sustainable aviation fuel generated from HEFA, but bioethanol has an important role to play here, and there's also quite a bit of research and development going into maritime. Last point, bioethanol is an important part of clean cooking with ethanol. We expect that that can be really a dynamic way of reducing carbon emissions. 2.2 billion people across the world still cook with charcoal. That leads to deforestation, limitations in biodiversity. So ethanol is an important part of reducing climate emissions by moving people to better means of cooking. Last point. Because we're at COP29, countries are considering their national determined contributions. And you will see that Canada, for example, has identified bioethanol as an important part of its national determined contributions. We hope that countries will consider bioethanol as a means to help reduce emissions and think about how they can include it in their NDCs. It is a part of making the transition. It's a complement to electrification. It is a complement to reducing fossil fuels. So that is a very important part of why we're here at COP29, and we hope those negotiators will consider bioethanol as a role in NDCs. Thank you.
Well, Gloria
Do you want me to
Alvarenga.
skip it for you?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much.
problem.
I was thinking about it. Thank you very much. So I'm Gloria Alvarenga. I'm the Director of Integration, Access, and Energy Security of the Latin American Energy Organization. And I want to do the overview from the energy in the region. So the first slide talk about a little bit about OLADE. We were established in 1973, 51 years ago. We have 27 member countries. We are an international organization with an intergovernmental focus, and we're trying to contribute to the integration, the sustainable development, and the energy security of the region, advising and promoting cooperation and coordination among the member countries. We have our governance bodies that we have technical groups that we work. Then we have the Council of Experts. We get twice a year on a meeting, and we have our meeting of energy ministers that is held in the Energy Week that we have once a year. This year was in Paraguay last 2 weeks ago. Next one, please. Thank you. Here is one of the domains about say the energy transition. Many times when you see this current photograph that I'm presenting right now, we can see along a road ahead, and it is evident, right? If we want to decarbonize the primary energy matrix, there's still a huge effort to do. And also we can see the 68% of the total energy supply. It's dominated by oil, natural gas, and coal. However, there's much better photography. The next slide, please. That we can see also the Latin American and the Caribbean region is one of the greenest regions in the world. Latin America and the Caribbean accounts 8.2% of the world population, and also our countries are the most medium developed economic countries, while the 14% renewable is the primary energy matrix. Latin America reaches the 31.5%. In addition to that, Latin American and the Caribbean barely accounts 8.1% of the global emissions. That it's wanted to be part of the contribution that we want to show. Next one, yes. It's important to mention that Latin America and the Caribbean still have 6 million people does not have access to electricity. And OLADE has established a technical group of work with partners of a Global Energy Alliance of People and Planet, AGEAP, and the Coalition from the Universal Access to Energy to effort to this gap that we have. Another important issue is that women are still underrepresented in the energy sector, and that's things that we have to remark. OLADE has also a gender commission right now and a gender technical group for that thing. And we want to discuss how can women can be or can have better chances and opportunity within the sector. Next one, please. Here is comparing comparing to the rest of the world, the region has registered the higher percent of renewable energy penetration at the private level. That is very important to remark here. This thanks to the natural condition that we have on the region and invaluable wealth of energy resources that we have. Likewise, as you can see, that coal is not important in the region as globally. Next one, please. Here, in this slide, the potential of renewable electricity generation in Latin America is immense, and it has been increased over the years. If we can look. The power in north of Chile or south of Peru and the Caribbean, wind power in Brazil, and north of Colombia and Mexico, we have our hydropower countries in Paraguay and Costa Rica, and it's nothing that we have three countries, for example, Costa Rica, Paraguay, and Uruguay, which certain days of the years we have a record of generation of electricity about 100% generated with renewable energy. So that's very important to remark here. Next one. Here, the potential that we have is impressive to note that we have barely an advantage of 29% of hydroelectrical potential, and also in the southern corner of the power of wind energy, especially in Chile and in Argentina, we have the largest wind of potential in the world in these countries. Likewise, in Peru, in Bolivia, and in Chile, we have radiation levels that perfect condition for solar energy, for example. And we have a potential, the opportunity of development the new markets, such a regional green hydrogen market. The next one, please. Here's the one that it matters in this panel, that it's important to note that Latin America and the Caribbean bioenergy production has been yearly increasing. And also bioenergy includes firewood, sugar cane, biogas, charcoal, liquid fuels, and organic waste. Liquid fuels, for example, such as ethanol and biodiesel, production and consumption is mainly concerned in Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, and the consumption is mainly in the transportation sector. Generally, it blends with oil derivatives, as gasoline and diesel. Between 2023 and 2024, there is a significant 10% increase in demand and supply bioenergy, which mainly correspond to the mother biofuels, has an ethanol and has biodiesel. And the next one, please. Right there. Well, due mainly the high growth in demand of liquid biofuels in Brazil in relation to the population growth, per capita bioenergy consumption in Latin America and in the Caribbean has been growing for over the last 3 years. And this demand is expected to increase, as I will present in the following slide, please. Here it is. The first one is the region must decarbonize sectors that have emissions which are hard to abate, such as industrial and transport sector. For this, a new technology will be needed, and the special role for fuels that is considered low emissions and biofuels among them. And second one is innovation and modernization of the infrastructure of electricity transport, transmission and distribution, that means. And finally, the energy transition have and impact certain sectors and the economy of society. It's crucial to mitigate an impact of the transition that we have among the groups that we seek and benefit for them. If we can go to the other one. OLADE present every single year one of our energy outlook of the region, and these documents include future scenarios that we have, the analysis, which include different factors such as current energy policies, plans, projects, and allows to do the intention of the countries that we have for the future. Based on that data, we have this prospective analyze, and we can follow in order to reach these commitments to reach net zero in 2050 compared to the business and the user scenario. I will briefly show you the scenarios that we have right now so you can see them. Oil falls 39% to 13%, for example. Hydropower share increased 9% to 12%. In terms of energy demand, for example, oil, coal, and natural gas reduces in 33% points, like 63% till 30%. And finally, the last one, please. I would like to finish my presentation. We give you 5 ideas to consider regarding the topics to this agenda. The first one is Latin America and the Caribbean possess vast resources, included sugarcane, soybeans, palm oil, and forest biomass, and which are ideal to a biofuel production. Second of all, the biofuel industry can stimulate economic growth to create jobs, especially in the rural and unserved communities. Third, the biofuels can reduce the region reliance of important fossil fuel. This is particularly relevant to the countries of the Caribbean, for example, that highly depend on the import oil and could benefit from developing local biofuel industries. Biofuel can help to reduce our green gas emissions, and while biofuels offer numbers of benefits that we have, sustainability challenges remain, such as deforestation and water, and a sustainable biofuel model that include certification standards, efficient land use, and waste to energy initiative could assure the environmental protection of the improve rural development. So that will be all from my side. Thank you very much.
Lice.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to be here. I'll ask someone to put up my presentation. I'm not going to go through everything. Should I do it? I will.
Well, you got to put it up.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil, and we are very much involved in energy, and that's why I'm here today, because we do a lot of cooperation in energy, and we do a lot of cooperation in ethanol. And we do that not because we want to export ethanol so much, but the idea of ethanol is something that Brazil believes in, because we've been doing that for decades now, and with, I want to say, great success, because right now we have a blending of 27%, but we just launched a program 2 weeks ago that it's a regulatory framework that allows us to blend up to 35% of ethanol into normal gasoline. And it means a lot in terms of avoided emissions, but it also means a lot in terms of development for our country. And I like to say that because when we talk about energy transitions, Brazil truly believes that each country has their own path. And sometimes electrification, although it can be a very, very sustainable solution for some regions, is not always the most affordable and actually not the most sustainable solution, depending on where you are. So I'd like to debunk that myth that electrification is the only way to carbonization, because when we talk about a transition, we also talk about development. We cannot support a transition that will take out jobs from our countries, that will take out jobs from agriculture. And with ethanol, it is proved that we can bring development, but we can also bring decarbonization, we can bring cleaner air. We know that regions that produce ethanol have a higher income, have a higher level of high quality employment. So this is something that we think that other countries could adopt if they want to, if they have the conditions to do it. And not all countries can produce ethanol, but a lot of countries can. And this is something that we would like more countries to consider, instead of going maybe for the most expensive solution where there is land available, where there is technical cooperation available, and potential to do something that will truly bring development and will truly bring immediate decarbonization. And this is something important because, yes, we need to invest in technology, we need to invest in innovation because we need many more solutions for the future, but ethanol is a solution that we have now, and it's tested and proved, and is available for immediate decarbonization. And we know that transport is one of the highest emitting sectors, and it's really hard to abate as well. So this is... what I want to talk about here very briefly is the Fuel of the Future program. It's something that President Lula launched. I mean, he approved the law, and now it's an approved regulation in Brazil, and it really it is really a result of all the knowledge that we were able to gather all these years with ethanol. So we've been producing ethanol since the 70s. Brazil started producing ethanol because we couldn't afford to continue to import gasoline and diesel because there was a crisis, the prices were spiking, Brazil didn't have dollars to continue to import it, so we decided that we needed a local solution that could provide the fuels that we needed. And I say that because right now we have several countries in our region that are facing the same problem. But I am a diplomat. I lived in Bolivia for 4 years very recently, and it's sad to see now that people are queuing in gas stations because there is no diesel available, no gasoline available, because there is no money to actually import this. And it's heavily subsidized. The government pays for a lot of it. And this is the case for many countries in our region. And we know a lot of countries also have problems with electricity right now. And you know this more than I do. So we want to showcase ethanol as a viable option. And all countries that have a sugar industry can actually have an ethanol industry. It's just a matter of adapting your production systems. And the Fuel of the Future program is a program that is about fuels, but it creates and integrates a lot of programs that we already had. It doesn't cover only ethanol. It covers biodiesel. It covers biogas. It also has a CCUS regulation, so carbon capture as well. And it also establishes a emission reduction mandate for the aviation sector that reflects the international commitments at ICAO. So it's a very important bill. We think it's going to bring a lot of investments because we know when we talk about energy transitions, we need an enabling environment. And a big part of this enabling environment is having a regulatory framework, is having a plan for the future, is having a plan where investors can see and say, oh, this country is really committed, I can invest that because there is an enabling environment there when we can thrive, where we can thrive and we can invest our money and we get the results back. So we think it's going to, first of all, not the most important, but a very important part of it is the avoided emissions. So you can see there, it's a lot by 2037, 705 million tons of CO2 in avoided emissions, $50 billion in investments. and it's very inclusive because, like I said, agriculture is a very important sector in our economy, and it integrates the energy and the agriculture sector, and also immediate decarbonization. So we had a bunch of programs. We have, I'm not going to get too much into it, but our biofuels program called Renova Bio is very, very thorough in terms of assessing a life cycle analysis. So we have a program based on life cycle analysis of the emissions. It allows for improvement, and it rewards the improvement in your energy efficiency. And we actually have a credit market just for biofuels in Brazil. So the fuel distributors in Brazil are obligated to compensate for the emissions, and they buy biofuels credits. So we have a prototype of a biofuels market. We would like it to be integrated into the larger carbon market in Brazil. But this is a very, very successful experience that we had, and it's constantly improving. We created the biomethane program. Is also an example of bioenergy that brings a lot of development to small communities, and we are also looking into synthetic fuels in this program as well. This was the launch, and this is to showcase actually the stakeholder support for this program, because this is really truly something that mobilizes a lot of sectors in Brazil. And we also showcased all types of vehicles that we can fuel with biofuels, not only ethanol but other as well. So one of the promising usages of biomethane is to fuel trucks and heavy transportation in the agricultural sector. So this was showcased as well. We have a airplane there, but there was no SAF to fuel it, and we can talk about that a little bit later. So this is the emission reduction also that was incorporated into the framework. So it will come into effect in 2027, like the ICAO, green diesel, carbon capture, and I'm going to stop at this one because it shows how much we accomplished in terms of avoided emissions in Brazil since the beginning of the usage of ethanol. And this is amazing because we displaced the equivalent of 2.5 billion barrels of oil. So this is something that saved a lot of money in Brazil, but also helped develop a lot of our economy. And then I will end here, but to say that right now, I think the ethanol and biofuels in general sector has had this great, it's a very good time for us because we have the maritime sector and the aviation sector looking into decarbonizing, and we know that in the short term, fuels are going to be the way to reduce emissions. We have other things that we can do, but these are technologies that are not ready. We cannot electrify the sectors anytime soon. We can also not use hydrogen for these sectors right now. Maybe a little closer with maritime, but ethanol and biodiesel are the solutions that are available. And we are seeing right now uncertainties about these markets because we know the demand is going to grow, and there is uncertainty about the availability of feedstocks, and there is uncertainty about sustainability. So if we want the sector to grow, we need to address these two uncertainties. And I think it's possible, and I think we should do it with information, with a science-based approach to it. We cannot have our mindset about food versus fuel in the way of actually what is the data, what can we do, how can we improve this production process, how can we actually use the right feedstocks to do it. And instead of just ruling out this option, we need to look into it and develop it the right way, because this is a way also to include developing countries in this new wave of transition, because the potential to do it is in countries where we have tropical agriculture, when we have high agricultural productivity. So this is the message that I wanted to bring today. Thank you.
We'll just here we go. Now it's working. Just hit it. Your energy is contagious. Thank you very much to all you ladies for your presentation. I think she had a nice segue about the plane not having sustainable aviation fuel. So let's turn it over to the air transport folks. Andrew.
Thanks very much. One of the good things about going last in a panel is that sometimes the other panelists help you do your job. So it makes my life easier. We're going to get a little bit more specific now and talking specifically about aviation and sustainable aviation fuels, or SAF. Could I start with a quick straw poll? Is everybody familiar with what SAF is? Yes? Okay. So then we might not need my first slide. So this is getting better and better. Look, let me just touch on a couple of very quick things. So those of you that are very familiar with SAF, please forgive me and bear with me here. But essentially, SAF is the term that our industry uses to describe a non-conventional aviation fuel. So basically, it's a fuel that is derived from non-fossil sources. And there's a whole bunch of different feedstocks that can be used to generate SAF. And this is a point that I will come back to a little bit later, because this issue of feedstocks is a really important one in terms of our industry and how the SAF and our sustainability journey out to 2050 can progress. The beauty about SAF is that it's a drop-in fuel, so its characteristics are pretty much identical to jet fuel. That saves us a lot in terms of infrastructure, in terms of engines and engine wear, but the beauty of SAF and using SAF instead of conventional fuel is that it can give us a reduction of up to 80% in life cycle emissions compared with fossil jet. So a massive opportunity there for our industry. The big problem with SAF that we have at the moment, there are two big problems. The first one is there's not much of it, and the second one is that what there is pretty darn expensive. Now, of course, those two things are related, but if we're looking at SAF, it accounts for around 0.5% of total global jet fuel demand. So it's a minuscule proportion. And its price is somewhere in the order of 2 to 4 times higher than the price of fossil jet fuel. That's a bit of an issue for our industry, because fuel costs account for 25 to 30% of an airline's total operating costs on average. So if you're starting to double or triple or quadruple a chunk of that price, you can see it has a big impact on the bottom line. So, in terms of why we care about SAF, many of you are probably aware of aviation's commitment to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And this comes from our roadmap, where we're trying to make the point, how do we get from here to delivering on that goal by 2050? If you look at the blue bar on this chart, that's essentially our baseline emissions. So if we do nothing, that's how much additional emissions we're going to have. And then we look at the different levers that are available to our industry to get us to work all the way back to net zero carbon by 2050. And you can see that the yellow bar, we get some efficiency improvements. These are some things that we can put into place right now. We think that hydrogen is a promising technology, but it's not going to come anytime soon. So that's why the red bar there is a relatively small bar. Some operational improvements also help to get us there. But the key thing is that green bar. That's what we think SAF needs to contribute. And that's something like 65% of getting us to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So it's SAF that's doing a lot of the work. Now, as I said, this is an IATA paper. Lest you think that we are just talking our book here, on my next slide, we have done a bit of a literature review. There's a whole lot of stuff going on here. The key takeaway is, with all of these various studies looking at aviation sustainability transition, SAF in all of them plays a key role. And SAF on this chart are the two green bars, the darker green and the lighter green shaded areas. So looking from left to right, you see that SAF is doing the lion's share of the work to get us to that commitment. As I mentioned, the volume of SAF currently is just 0.5 of 1%. The good news is that we think the capacity is going to ramp up towards 2030. And it really needs to be blunt. When you look at by 2030, on the first slide there, first chart, sorry, on the left-hand side, that also splits it out by some of the key pathways. And as Linda mentioned, HEFA is the key at the moment. We think that the HEFA production process is going to account for nearly 80% of total SAF production by 2030. Now, those proportions are going to change over time, but HEFA is kind of key for us at the moment. When we look at the number of projects, we've got something like 130 projects in our list. This is worldwide, 130 SAF projects that are underway or are coming out to 2030. You can see that most of those are in Europe and in the Americas. What we think is that this presents a real opportunity for other parts of the world, for other regions, to also play a role here in terms of helping us to get SAF into production. And Lloyd, you spoke at the outset around the positive indirect impacts that these investments can bring to a community in terms of jobs, in terms of economic activity, incomes, all of those sorts of things. So we see this as a real opportunity for some of the other regions of the world. This also brings me to the important point here around feedstocks, because feedstocks can be a bit of a geographical issue as well. Our view at IATA is that we need to be feedstock agnostic. We don't really care how we get SAF produced. We're open to anything. We need the volumes. And so having a diverse range of feedstocks that go into the production of SAF is a fairly fundamental issue for us. One of the other things, and again we've touched on policy a little bit in the preceding comments, the two key issues when it comes to SAF, the first one is a technological issue. Right? We've got to produce this stuff. The second one is the policy element, and we think this one is really important because we need to build, a critical mass to start to get these projects going. And we think that needs to have an enabling policy environment. This is not about aviation putting its hand out for money, not at all. But the policy environment needs to be a supportive environment and needs to be an enabling environment for us to make this investment worthwhile for investors. And to make this happen. And you see some of the key things here. Policy needs to be tailored to local conditions, but at the same time, we also need to have some sort of harmonisation or consistency at a global level as well. Strategic policy sequencing is key. Initially, government support for R&D is vital, and then it can be followed by more market-based policies. So we don't see necessarily a permanent role for governments and policy in all of this. But at the start of the process, we think it's absolutely critical. Perhaps the key point on this slide is the fourth point there, that policies must be stable, predictable, long-term and globally harmonised. Otherwise, we don't get the investment that we need. That's really fundamental to developing this industry. So, in terms of policy, it's not like there's no policy out there. There's quite a bit of policy, as you can see here. We note at the top right-hand side, this is a non-exhaustive list of what's actually going on. I really don't want to get into the detail of what's happening in this slide. You can see lots happening. It's not exactly globally coordinated or harmonised. Everybody is doing different things. Don't get me wrong, some of these things are very positive. We're moving in the right direction. But our concern is that we wind up with a patchwork of regulation which is counterproductive. We've just published, the good news on this slide is you don't need to worry about this. I'm not going to go through it. Lloyd's looking at the time and thinking we're not going to get to Q&A at this rate. We've recently released some net zero roadmaps. We did an initial run last year and we've updated our policy and finance roadmaps. This is the key takeaway from our policy roadmap, and I'm not going to go into it. I simply wanted to put it here. If people are interested in SAF in more detail, these are some of the things that we think are really important ways for us to get there. And you can see we look at 3 different time horizons here because the time horizon also matters. What can we do right now to get this industry, this investment happening? And then what does it mean in terms of the sort of more medium and longer term to get us to 2050 and that goal of net zero carbon emissions for aviation? Anybody who would like a copy of the slides, which will have the link, please give me a yell afterwards. We're very happy to make them available, and you can follow this one up and check out our report in a little bit more detail. We're not trying to hide the way that you can contact us. I'm sorry, that was perhaps lost in translation. But once again, for anybody afterwards, please feel free. We'll make sure you can actually read this one and so that you can contact us. But we're always happy to engage with anybody who's interested on any of these issues at any time. Thanks very much, Lloyd.
Well, thank you, Andrew. You had a great slide deck. I think I'll have to spend some time looking at some of those slides to figure out exactly where you're going. I really like the optimism and the energy of all our presenters. Thank you all very much. I think, as I started out talking about, we're in this transition from a fossil fuels-based economy to a bioeconomy. And the last presentation on SAF is really exciting. And there's commitment by the aviation industry to get to that based on their commitments in Paris. And so I think it's very exciting. I have some trepidation, though, as we're trying to promote the bioeconomy and other many uses of the bioeconomy, and not just liquid biofuels. I understand, or this was told to me at the University of Tennessee earlier this year by a professor from North Carolina State, that to achieve SAF, which is now at 0.01%, to get to 100%, it's going to consume 70% of the feedstock for biomass globally. That would prohibit, a lot of the other elements for the bioeconomy and for biofuels also. Is that an accurate figure? And if so, that really, I think, will pose a challenge for myriad industries and myriad applications of the bioeconomy. I don't know if you have any Any thoughts on that?
Perhaps just a couple of quick ones. I don't know if that number is correct. I know that there is a lot of concern, and sometimes I think there are some vested interests and a bit of scaremongering at play in all of this. I don't feel that this is a dire situation. We don't expect in aviation. Les talked about food versus fuel. We think it's possible to have both. We're not suggesting that we should be making sustainable aviation fuel while people are going hungry. There is a balance, and this is absolutely an issue that we need to think about, and that's where, in terms of policy, and particularly the local policy, needs to come into play, because there's no one-size-fits-all globally with this issue. So it needs to be taking into account the particular circumstances of the country or the region involved. SAF is not going to work everywhere, and that's fine, right? But perhaps I can just very quickly leave you with a story that I heard just in the last couple of weeks. It was a discussion with a government minister from a country in Africa who said they are quite excited about the opportunity of developing a SAF industry there, because they've realised that they have a lot of farmland which is so degraded they can no longer farm crops on that. But they can grow crops which can be used as a feedstock for SAF. And in doing so, that helps to regenerate the land and helps to get it back to the point where it can be used for cropping. So, I don't think this is an either-or question. I think it's not a simple question, but it's not one that it's not a problem that we can't solve.
All right. Well, this is good. I think you've already motivated some comments from other panelists. So, Lais.
Yes, I'd love to comment on that one, because this was already an issue or a question raised before we had this demand for SAF, and I think now, because and I'll be quite blunt right now, because rich countries need SAF, people are looking into this problem a little more closely. But availability of feedstocks, as I mentioned before, has always been an uncertainty for the bioenergy sector, but it's also, I think, not rocket science, because we know, and I'll give you an example. In Brazil, only 1.2% of our agricultural land is used for ethanol. And this is only 4% of our total, 1.2% of the territory and 4% of the agricultural land is used for ethanol. Apart from that, we have to invest in innovation. We need to look for new feedstocks. We need to look into degraded land, sustainable practices. In Brazil, we produce second crop ethanol, and it uses land that is already being used for other things. So we have 2-3 harvests a year. And it's possible to improve yields with technology, with research, diversify feedstock. So we are looking into producing, with ethanol with macaúba, which is a palm from Brazil that is not edible. Is degraded lands. So I think we can figure this out, but this requires research, but also it requires that we look into sustainability, because if we don't assess sustainability, we cannot do that correctly, because like he said, sustainability is something that is locally available. So we can't go with this, ethanol is just going to be like that, it's just going to be, sugarcane or ethanol or corn, and that's it. No, and that's why, for example, ICAO has different routes that are being approved for producing SAF, because we look into the life cycle of each one of the feedstocks, how you produce it, and that's why you're going to get where you need, and that's why we need regulation, because we need investments in that as well.
Thank you, Lais. That's a good point. The whole issue of feedstocks is obviously something that can be very controversial, and I think, is a lot of debate about that. There's debate in the United States, Linda, about corn ethanol. There's been debate for years. The EPA and the USDA and the state of Iowa having discussions about the greening, how sustainable is it and how green is it. And I think that'll occur with any other type of feedstock. So it's important. The promotion of liquid biofuels has been something that we at EEC have been working on. We've been work with the Pan American Coalition for Liquid Biofuels. Just a few weeks ago, as I mentioned earlier, we had the Central American energy ministers talking about engaging in the development of blending rates in those countries, those policies, so that they could look at not just corn or sugar or soy or palm oil, but other elements that they might be producing in the tropics that you just mentioned, Lais, of feedstocks that could go into the development, not just of liquid biofuels, but also into the development of agriculture, the promotion of agriculture. Linda, where are we in terms of the greening and the debate related to the sustainability of these feedstocks, of indirect land use change? How much has the industry improved so that this debate is now put aside and it's not so controversial that has been for the last 20 years?
Well, I think that one thing that the U.S. Grains Council is doing is working with bioethanol advocates. For example, UNFAO, UNIDO, Sustainable Energy for All. We're working with organizations that recognize that bioethanol is a part of the economy, that it can help sustain livelihoods, that it can be managed and produced responsibly and sustainably. I think that what Lais was saying about the fact that it does depend on your geography, it depends on your resources, it depends on how you decide to allocate resources. And as Lais said, we can do this. We know how to do it. We know how to manage these things responsibly. And it's also a very important part. You know, who's feeling really the hardcore impacts of climate change? You're seeing it in Asia, you're seeing it in sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, we're experiencing it in the United States, but in those countries that are experiencing it at a dramatic rate, you know, they have the ability and the sovereignty to determine what kind of feedstocks they want to use to produce biofuels. They have that capability. I don't think we should be paternalistic in the way that developing countries approach their agricultural economies and decide how to use what they grow. I think this is something that we have the technology, we have the sophistication, we can make determinations, and we can use science to do this responsibly. And I would also add that if you look historically at research and development, we have had rapid increases in crop yields and also ethanol yields. That's another part that the debate doesn't really center around, but the fact that we are producing more ethanol with less is a positive indication that we can do this. And I want to make sure, I know that you wanted to say something, so I want to pass the...
Thank you very much. Just to focus in some to address to this challenge that we are seeing here, I think Latin America and the Caribbean region, for example, needs to implement some policies, some practice to prioritize the sustainability of the land management, the efficient of the water use, and also the investment of the rural infrastructure. And we have 2 weeks ago our ministerial energy meetings that all the ministries committed to in the ministerial decision from decarbonization. And also, we have an observatory of methane that we are helping the countries, to get over and to help to the emissions that we have. So I just want to point that energy sector is trying to and is working to. And in this ministerial meeting, they took the chance to decarbonization. So it's something new and something that is very important right now in this point.
So I want to get into maybe the competition of different types of fuel sources. So electric vehicles are growing rapidly. It's going to take a lot of logistical investment in order to get enough lithium and in order to produce enough batteries to compete with, petroleum and potentially liquid biofuels. But of course, it's going to grow by leaps and bounds. Elon Musk has, invested heavily in being very present in the political atmosphere in the United States, and that will probably take a global perspective. I like the quote of Secretary Tom Vilsack, the Secretary of Agriculture of the United States, last year at the COP, I believe, and it was in our pavilion. He mentioned that, as much as he supports electric vehicles and its reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and all of that, and the future of that opportunity, he doesn't want to fly across. This last year, the COP was in Dubai. He doesn't want to fly from Washington, D.C. to Dubai over the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea on some battery. He wants to have a fuel. So there's going to be competition in this space, right? And the competition is good. How do you guys see the role for liquid biofuels in competition with these other sources of energy and electricity that are and power that are coming? And what are the policy, perhaps, frameworks that governments working with ICA and your organizations, what policy frameworks do we need for governments to establish to both promote your sector, but at the same time, be open to innovation of all kinds? I don't know who wants to jump into that. Linda.
I would refer first to the International Energy Agency's study on the type of energy sources that we need to reach net zero. And they have recognized that it's going to take many different pathways for different countries to reach net zero. And there's no way we can afford to rule out biofuels. They are an integral part of reaching net zero. They're immediately available. They offer immediate emissions reduction, and it's important to consider urban environments versus rural environments, weather patterns. It's great if you're in London and Paris and New York, San Francisco, Sao Paulo, wherever it is. If your urban cities have electric vehicles, nobody's going to argue against that. But when you're in Kansas and it takes 3 hours to drive one place to another and it's quite cold, you're not going to be, maybe you have a hybrid. But I think part of this is recognizing that there are many paths to decarbonization. And what we really need to do is, and we are doing it, we need to invest in research and development. In the United States, we have 17 laboratories. We're looking at different energy resources. We're not ruling out hydrogen. We're not ruling out ammonia. We understand that all of these resources are going to be necessary to reach net zero and reduce emissions. And I think someone's reaching for the microphone.
Yes, I think I have two. I think there are two ways to answer this question. One is when we talk about electric vehicles, we're talking about a technology choice. And I think, in my opinion, policies should be based on life cycle analysis. Because if we're choosing a technology for the sake of the technology, we are disregarding exactly how impactful this technology is, and all technologies are impactful. So if I'm making a choice to use electric vehicles, I want to know why. Is it because it looks nice, or is it because it actually brings emission reductions, for example. So if you run an electric vehicle in a country where the electric matrix is dirty, it's basically coal, it doesn't have an advantage, for example, when you compare it with a combustion engine or a hybrid or a flex fuel vehicle that is using ethanol and gasoline, and it is proved. And when we are assessing climate policy, we need to integrate life cycle analysis. Otherwise, we're just making technological choices, but it doesn't mean that there is actual reduction in emissions. So I think there is a bit of a fantasy about certain technologies being a silver bullet, but there isn't. And the other thing that I think we need to look into is that I think market will probably drive a lot of these usages in the future, because when we look at the premium that we expect that is going to be paid for SAF, I bet a lot of countries or a lot of producers might want to get that premium and produce SAF. But great news, SAF can be produced in a biorefinery. And a biorefinery can produce a lot of different fuels. It can produce biobunker, it can produce SAF, it can produce chemicals. So actually, when you have an infrastructure in place to produce biofuels, you can actually produce a range of different bioproducts. So I think the approaching the problem from it's either or, like Linda said, it's not even a starting point, but also there's different ways of doing things. And I think we need to, like I said before, incorporate science into the climate debate. We cannot be picking and choosing technologies just because some countries have them, some countries control them, but because they are actually, rational choices based on the objective of the policy that we want to achieve. So, yeah.
Gloria.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking there is not only just one path. It's not only a single target in this. It's multiple paths, and we have share a common interest, and we need to fight against climate change, but we have to guide and lead and help, and it's our job to help the leaders that we're running and to support it, to do good policies, and it's not just one path, it's a multiple path, because it's as you said, Linda, every single country is different, and it's not going to be like a single path. It's going to be a multiple for me.
Andrew.
Thank you. Just very quickly, totally aligned with everything that has been said so far. Let me just say, for our industry, our focus is on SAF because that's really the only near-term option that we have. We're certainly not ruling out these alternative methods of propulsion, whether it's hybrid, electric, hydrogen, or whatever, but that's not going to help us get on the way to net zero and delivering on that. And I think Lace made a very important point. One of the messages that when we speak to governments, we try to say, this is not an aviation problem. This is not an industry-specific problem. In fact, this is not even a transportation problem. What we're talking about here is the global energy transition, and policymakers should not be thinking narrowly. The decisions need to be more holistic, more considered than just are we going to invest in a SAF production plant or something, right? Because it has implications for other sectors as well, directly, but it's part of a much broader issue that we need to be taking that more holistic approach to policy development.
There we go. This is all, I think, very exciting. And we at IECA have been investing heavily in the bioeconomy and now biofuels with the work that Agustin Torroba is doing with a lot of you. We want to thank all of you for your support. At the end of this, we're going to have an MOU signing, but we're not going to do that quite yet. I want to have an opportunity for you guys to give us, the Director General, myself, the audience, whoever's viewing online, what more do we need to do from the perspective of ECA, the networks that we've established with all of you? And we want to thank all of you for your partnership with us to make this coalition a success. And we've seen some really strong policy development and the support of our member states in the Americas to invest in biofuels, to invest in the regulatory policy and the policy framework to develop these economies, which is really exciting. What more? What else do we need to do in order to make this a success, and a success for farmers, a success for the economies, a success for getting closer to net zero and helping this transition from a fossil fuel-based economy into a bioeconomy? What else can we be doing? And so we just, whoever wants to start, and then we'll just kind of move around from there. Andrew, you have the microphone. Go for it.
Lucky me. I don't really have a useful answer here, Lloyd. I'm going to be honest. You know, what more do we need from ECA? I think we just need more. I think, you know, our team, particularly our team in the Americas region, work very closely with ECA. We're very grateful for the engagement that you have with our industry. We think that there are more opportunities for us to do more things in ways that perhaps we haven't thought of yet. But I'm really scratching around for anything more specific than that.
Well, maybe it'll come to you after you hear some of the other answers, and if not, that's fine.
I have a suggestion.
All right.
One of the things that will become more and more important as we move to a world where we need to account for carbon everywhere, all the time, for everything, we need to think about sustainability criteria harmonization very seriously. And we need to be able to influence the fora where this discussion is happening, not very transparently, and not taking into account regional perspectives. So if we want to make a difference as a region, if we want to be important players in the future in the sustainable fuels, we need to influence how the regulatory framework is being defined right now, how the sustainability criteria is doing. But we also need to improve our sustainability. And this is very important because what is going to make investment possible in our region is proving that we can do it sustainable, because we need the premium for the sustainability, because this is the capital that is going to reward our activities and is going to make this activity viable. So if I can recommend something for IECA to increase cooperation with countries. I know a little bit about your work because I worked at the Brazilian mission to the OAS for 3 years in DC a few years ago. I know that you can do it. You have this capital to mobilize the agenda, and I think sustainability is the way. We cannot have a non-sustainable agricultural sector. We need to make sure that our agricultural people understand the importance of it to access markets.
Thank you, Lice. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Lice. I loved what you had to say. It really kind of flows into what we're doing here at the COP. I mean, all around us are people who are opposed to biofuels, they're opposed to agriculture, and we've been here now for 3 years as this kind of voice in the wilderness to talk about how agriculture is really part of the solution, an important and critical part of the solution to all the things these guys want to accomplish. But heretofore, we've been taken for granted. And so we're here also as a bridge from our ministries of agriculture and ministries of foreign affairs to the rest of the world to talk about the Americas and what we're doing. And also to defend farmers and farmers' interests and what everyone else needs in terms of food. We all have to eat, and we need farmers that are successful and productive, and biofuels is an important component to doing all that. Gloria.
Okay. I think Olade and ICA have to still working as last year we met the director here with the Secretary of Executive of Olade, and we just this year we do capacity building, training programs together to go to energy transitions. And we're together. I think this is one of the most important things that we can do, like the capacity building and trainings and all the the academic stuff to increase the capacity building in our countries. This, I think we, as at least Olade and ICA, have to go this path and continue this alliance that we have in this matter.
Well, thank you. And to add a little bit to that, when I went to the inauguration of the president of Guatemala, I was introduced to the regulatory official of Guatemala that's involved in working with Agustin. She gave me a big hug for all the work that Agustin has done to help set up the regulatory framework in Guatemala. So it's helping. It takes time, but it takes investment, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of travel by all of you to help these countries, get to where they need to be, and we think will help all of us in terms of the promotion of a biofuels agenda. Linda.
I would just say two things. I would echo what Lai said about we want science-based policies. I think when you bring scientists to the table, and I think this is going to be more and more important in the future, that we bring scientists and policymakers together to look at the data, see what's possible, understand where research is and where it's going. I think that's very important. The other thing I think we can do is make the case that regulatory disharmony is holding up the marketplace. It's holding up investment. So we need this regulatory harmony in terms of sustainability so that investments are made so that we can move forward. And I think ICA can maybe bring the regulators together and maybe do a little bit of cross-Atlantic work so that we can show that we need to have an enabling environment so that the marketplace can help resolve reaching net zero.
Thank you, Linda, and I agree with you. We did some cross-Atlantic work today that hopefully some of your members, yesterday, I guess, working on a consensus of the Americas, once again, as a bridge to the rest of the world on the issue of the EUDR. So we'll take all of your advice into consideration and move forward. You guys, can always talk to Agustin to help make all that happen. He's done a wonderful job on behalf of EEC and on behalf of all our member states. I want to thank you all for your participation in this panel. It won't be the last one, but before you leave, or before we have chaos here, we're going to have the signing of an MOU between Fundación Nueva Generación Argentina, who's been a major contributor to the Liquid Biofuels Coalition, and ICA, Director General. So I'd like to invite, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. We're going to move on to the audience, and we'll invite the Director General and Diego here to the stage. So thank you very much. You can give them all a round of applause, please.
Congratulations. Very, very briefly, I would like to sign this agreement with an Argentine foundation called New Generation, posted in Rosario. Rosario is the capital of the agriculture sector in Argentina. This foundation is committed with environmental issues, so I'm very glad. He's going to organize the Climate Week probably in April in Argentina. So without further ado, they are offering.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much. We married.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Today is very important because it's inside to the panel with the coalition, la coalición Panamericana de Biocombustibles Líquidos, where our foundation worked very hard for this goal. And I know in this moment, not only I signed with the ICA, the mothers of the OES, is I signed with an institution with a big human quality. And I think ICA, Manuel, don't know representative only the Minister of the Agriculture to America. You represented the farmers. The farmer believe to the fight to the climate change and care and defending the environment. Thank you very, very much. Okay. Please. Okay.
Oh gosh, it's so far.
Matty,